Oh, Will Riley. I'm rooting for him like they're Jase Richardson and Jackson Kohler out there, though, today. Tell you that.
Oh, that's so funny. All right, let's see. Get things
A lot of
fired up
Will
here.
and come on, KJ. Let's go, Tommy. Oh, they're up 7. Woohoo! There we go. Hummerkaus finally threw it in the ocean.
He, he finally found the bottom of the basket, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if I can actually get this to work here. Hey, everybody, we're about ready to go on. Start live here for post Michigan State, the win over Wisconsin. Sometimes I wonder what I'm doing here. Okay. Sometimes I feel every year of my 50 years when it comes to technology. So I think this is one of
Eh,
those here, if you know what I mean.
sometimes I do. Oh,
Hey, everybody, it's Eric here alongside Rod to talk about MSU's 71-62 win over the Badgers of Wisconsin in East Lansing this afternoon. We are live, and thanks again for joining us here on YouTube. If not, you can head on over to YouTube next time. We try and go live after every game. So before we begin, I just want to send a quick word of thanks to Tim Johnson, who's supporting our show at the Scott Skiles level on YouTube. So thanks, Tim, and to all of you who support the show and what we're doing over here at Tiff Knots. If you like our stuff, head on over to our support page, www.tffinots.com/support, so you get the links. Okay, Rod, MSU moves to 15-3 in the Big Ten with the win and sole possession first place as we record right now during the Michigan-Illinois game.
yeah, I just want
Okay.
a quick side note. As you just mentioned, Michigan, Illinois is playing as we're recording this live. So I am not going to apologize for any exclamations you might hear from me as we're going. As we're starting this, Illinois is up 6 with just under 13 to play. Yeah,
And it just sounds like there may be more editing for me to do for the podcast version, which I have to keep a little more PG. So,
possibly, quite possibly.
all right. So, I think it's fair now to say Michigan State has played everyone,
Oh, Hummer Cows.
earned, earned their first place position in the Big Ten, especially considering how many very good teams they've had to beat on the road to do it, especially. They boast a 7-2 record on the Big Ten on the road, which is not too shabby. And this is a game Michigan State trailed by 2 at the half, despite having Jase Richardson picking up 2 quick fouls and not playing much most of the first half. Jaden Akins provided most of the scoring punch in the first half with 4 threes in the first half to keep things and keep Michigan State in contact. And then, Michigan State just kind of did their thing in the second half. We'll go through more details, but I just want to throw a couple numbers out at you. So +3, +3, +2, -4, +7. And those are the point differentials Michigan State moved within every 4-minute break in the second half, just showing you that they just really just wear teams down. And I thought you really saw it once we had under 4. Wisconsin just mentally making mistakes like crazy. I think they had a couple turnovers. Richardson had that turnover where a steal it's kind of weird, just right at the top of the key. Anyway, Wisconsin just looked like just kind of ran out of gas at the end, and I think it's we keep saying it's real, but I don't think there's any question that it is real that this team just wears you down and just grinds you to a nub.
It is real, but I want to say something else actually about that under 4 segment. Yes, the defense was absolutely there, but you mentioned Michigan State only getting 5 minutes of action from Jase Richardson in the first half
Right.
because of foul trouble. He hit an early 3, and then that was kind of it. Um, he dominated the game in the under 4 period without scoring a point. I don't believe he scored. Maybe he scored a free throw later, but he had 3 consecutive plays to take the lead from 2 to 8, where he made the assist. He had
Yeah.
one, actually, check that, 2 to 9, because the first one of them ended up being a 3-point play for Jackson Kohler. It was 62-60. And late shot clock, they get the ball to Jase. Um, he penetrates and throws a wraparound underneath to Jackson, who had done what he does very, very well, which is find open space, make himself available. And I'm not even remotely kidding about that.
Yeah.
That is a skill. And he has become very, very good at it. He scores, gets fouled, hits the free throw. So now Michigan State is up 2 possessions. Then Jase had that play you mentioned where he stole the ball, but the steal was one thing. The awareness to throw it ahead the way he did to Jaden Akins for a
Yep.
dunk was incredible. And I'm forgetting what the third one was, but there was a third. Oh, it might have actually been the second one. I think Jaden's was the third because the second one was where he penetrated and made, I think it was a no look bounce pass. It was definitely a bounce pass to a streaking Carson Cooper who dunked it. Um, he also had a rebound or two in that segment, I believe. I mean, Jase Richardson took the game over without scoring. And
Hmm.
you cannot pay. And I'm going to take a bow for a moment. I tweeted on our account to that effect and got a like from many people, including one Jason Richardson. So I guess he agrees. Um, but it was remarkable. And he obviously he scored a bunch of points in the second half too. But Jase Richardson has become a guy who can kill you in basically any segment of the game. He can do everything. He can
Hmm.
hit threes. He can hit mid-range shots. He can get to the rim and convert. So he's a true three-level scorer. He can draw fouls. He can defend. He can force a turnover. He can just play solid, straight-up defense. He can make sound, correct passes, and he can also make spectacular plays, which we saw today. Oh, and he can rebound. What did he end up with today?
I think
Uh,
5 or 5.
was it 5? Yeah,
Yeah.
5 rebounds. I mean, listen to this stat line: 11 points, 4 of 9 overall, but 3 for 6 from three. He did miss his one free throw, so I guess we got to ding him for something. But 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 turnover, 1 steal. That's a stat line for a guy again who only played 5 minutes in the first half and ended up with only 20 minutes. So this was more like his, say, November through January kind of playing time with the way it ended. And he still produced all of that stuff. I guess, yeah, 8 of his points coming in the second half.
Yeah.
Just just remarkable stuff. So I wanted to call out the individual there, although there are a lot of individuals
Can
we
I
could
can
talk
I add
about
to
this
that
game.
too? The
Yeah,
one thing that I think is really impressive about that. So I I always put the the caveat as a freshman, but truly, not only did he as a freshman do what he did, but the fact that he was able to sit out the entire first half. How many times have we seen a guy where they sit out the first half of foul trouble, they come back and
hundred
they're just not themselves in the second half. He came in
percent.
like I just missed the first half. It was kind of weird. I mean, he's just the way he just kind of approaches the game. I think is just it's not. I mean, it's like a veteran. Really, it's really impressive.
He is. I made this comparison a couple months ago, and I've seen nothing to shake me from it. And he plays with a little more outward emotion than this guy, but that's about the only significant difference because otherwise I see tons of similarities. He reminds me more of Joe Dumars than anybody
Yeah.
else.
Hmm.
Just can do everything. Usually, Jace makes spectacular plays, but they're not like the Cohen Carr
Right.
plays. Or in Joe Dumars' case, he didn't make spectacular plays the way Isaiah did. But he could occasionally do the spectacular, but what he was always going to do is make the right decision.
Yeah.
And that is what Jase Richardson does. And I think that, you know, the noise you've been hearing lately is correct, in my opinion, in that all this caterwauling all year long about Michigan State not having a go-to guy, and you can't fault people for saying that because it's been true. I think that's over. It doesn't mean he's going to lead them in scoring every time out, but I think it's pretty clear they've got a best player.
Oh yeah. Well,
You
we thought
know,
that at the beginning of the season, and
we
then
did.
but then we're like, well, Jaden can come back on it. But
It,
yeah, you're
it's
right.
early. It's early, and you got a lot of, and you don't know if somebody's going to hit a freshman wall. And Jace kind of did, although I think it was also maybe
Sort
health
of.
related too.
Yeah.
By the way, Illinois is just bombing threes now. They're up
They're actually
12 with
hitting
under
threes for
10.
once. Wow.
Yeah, they're hitting a bunch of them, and they're up 12 with under 10. So, and then getting back to the important stuff, yeah, it changes the dynamic for this Michigan State team. I do believe that. To have a guy that when they, and again, like I said, under 4, you're up by 2. So it's winning time, and the game is right there in the balance for either side. Jase Richardson makes multiple plays consecutively to really be the catalyst in taking that lead from 2 to 9, and it was game over
Yeah.
at that point. You can't define go-to guy any better than that. A guy who, when it really matters, when you really need it, goes out and makes plays. And again, those plays don't have to be him hitting threes or him dunking on somebody. They can come as they did today via defensive plays and playmaking for others,
Yeah.
and grabbing a defensive rebound or two. And he did all of those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, hats off to him. We're gonna at some point, probably in the off season, I think. I've been thinking about a lot about this. We're going to do, as part of an episode or an episode entirely, on the best freshman seasons in Michigan State history. And I'm telling you, with every passing game, this guy gets closer and closer to the top. He's not going to be at the very top because that's one
Yeah.
guy. But other than that, it's starting
Well,
to get into that territory for
let's
me.
let's just say this: the season is not done.
Right. Well,
I mean, it's
no,
not done.
I'm telling you, no. I
All right.
saw the other guy, but I will say this: he, when you think about all-time greats at Michigan State, so we think about the very best after Magic. So you think about guys like Mateen Cleaves, Steve Smith, um, Denzel Valentine. All those guys obviously are in the upper tier. Cassius Winston, the
Sure.
upper tier of all-time greats. None of those guys I just mentioned had a freshman season as good as the one Jase Richardson's having. None of
No.
them. You know, Scott Skiles was pretty good as a freshman. He wasn't this good. The only guy, well, I don't, I'll just say this and then we can move on. The only guy I might be kind of tempted to put into this category is Sean Respert. But the difference there is Sean Respert was a redshirt freshman. He'd had a year to acclimate
Mm-hmm.
to college, which was a little bit of an advantage. And Sean Respert was not the overall player Jase Richardson is as a freshman. He was a superb shooter and scorer, but he was not the defender. He was not the playmaker. He was not the rebounder that Jase Richardson is. So that's just a little foreshadowing. But you're right, the season's not over, so we'll see where it gets to. But man, he's up there.
And also, just throw in today, he also had 6 assists. And I think those are all the second half, as you mentioned. He had those three
Oh,
just like
and you
late.
know who else didn't have as good a freshman season as he did? As he is? His dad. That's another
Who
one.
who is his dad? I don't remember.
Yeah. He was some guy who could dunk a little bit.
All right. Well, other good performances. Obviously, Jaden Akins, I mentioned, he finally got going from three in the first half, and his offense was great. He had finished with 19 points, 6 for 18 from the field, 4 for 9 from three, but I think it was like 4 for 5 or 4 for 6 initially.
He was.
Struggled from
Yeah.
the line, 3 for 6 from the line, but everybody
Yep.
from the Spartans struggled from the free throw line. But 8 rebounds for
Yep.
Akins, 3 of them offensive, had an assist, no turnovers, played 30 minutes. And I think, a big thing for us is the job he did in John Tanji. He wasn't the sole person guarding him, but he did a good job just defensively. Everyone did a really good job on the guards, I thought.
Yeah, without question. The defense he played on Tanji, I thought, the very first possession
Yeah, got
of the
stuck in
game,
that
he
screen. I
got
don't know if that
hung
was a
up.
big hedging or
Yep,
something.
he got hung up on the screen, and Tanji drained a three. And I thought, oh boy. And then
That was
after
it.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, after that, he was relentless. And you're right, there were other guys. I thought Cohen Carr had some good segments on him. Frankie Fiddler
Frankie
had some
Fiddler. I mean,
really
let's talk
good.
about Frankie a little bit.
Yep.
Holy cow. He was, I thought he was not going to be able to hang with Tanji, but he really didn't seem to have too much
Frankie
trouble.
Frankie Fiddler has hung with everybody
Yeah, he
defensively
has.
since we've gotten into Big Ten play for sure. That has not been an issue. I'm not saying he's a lockdown guy quite the level that Jaden is. He's probably not even quite the defensive player that Cohen is, but he's, to borrow a Jim Comparoni phrase, he's certainly functional, and I would argue maybe even a little better than that. But just going back to Jaden for a second,
Hmm.
yeah, he was aggressive offensively, and it didn't work sometimes. He was only 6 for 18 from the floor. So that means he was 2 for 9 on twos. but he was 4 for 9 on threes. And that was huge. That was absolutely massive. Especially as you said in the first half, you don't have Jase Richardson on the floor very much. So you need that scoring to stay in the game. And it was tough. Michigan State was fine. No, they ended, were they on the half with 30? I think it was 32-30 or
I think
34
that's right. Yeah, I
32.
think it's 32-30. Yeah.
34-32. That's
There
what
you
it
go.
was.
It's 2 point game. Yeah.
32 points at the half, but man, they struggled to get it. I
Hmm.
mean, they really did. By the way, Illinois is now banking in threes and they're up 16. So I think Michigan State is about to have a 1 game lead in the conference with 2 to play.
Well, that's about right. That team's
Um,
been playing fire for
yeah,
weeks.
they have, and they were due this. But yeah, I think that Jaden obviously was huge. You add in the defense and the rebounding, and then you recognize even though the efficiency overall was not great, the efficiency from three was outstanding. He had almost half their makes. They made 9 as a team. He had 4 of them.
Yeah.
And when they came at a point where Michigan State was just struggling to get anything going offensively, I can live with that kind of game, 6 for 18 any day of the week. I think Jaden stepped up. Absolutely.
Yeah. And hitting the boards hard. I mean, 8 rebounds. It's we
Three
know
of them
he's
offensive
yeah,
too.
we know he's got it in him. And then let's just kind of talk about Fiddler. I think, not only did he have a good defensive game against Tanji, but he also contributed offensively. 4 for 8 from the field, one
Yeah.
for two from three, and had what, 6 rebounds,
Six
I think. And
boards.
so,
Six
yeah, I mean, he
boards.
was
Yeah. No, he
he was really
was
consequential out there.
Frankie was really good. I mean, this is
He looks comfortable
I
finally,
saw
like
I
totally
saw
comfortable.
I saw absolutely. I saw somebody tweet this, and I think they're absolutely right. I said, it must have been really difficult for Frankie Fiddler to kind of find his way into the role that he has ended up with at Michigan State. And I think that's true
Hmm.
because this isn't even just, it's standard that a guy will transfer up from a mid major and they were a big scorer there and they're not a big scorer at the Big Ten level. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
But he was brought to Michigan State to be that. Like this wasn't just, well, we're adding this guy and he's going to be part of our group. Like there was, and that was the case because he was starting earlier in the year.
Right.
Like they expected him. I expected him. I thought he was going to lead this team in scoring. I've very rarely been as wrong about that, about anything, I would say, as I was about that. But man, to find his way into being what he is now, which is a very valuable piece of the puzzle. He's a guy that when you're faced with a team that gives you the kind of problem that Tanjay gives you as a power wing who can still hit from the perimeter as well, uh, with size, and you've got a card like Frankie Fiddler to play, and you can look to him when maybe you're struggling a little bit offensively, and and get some point production with him going to the rim, creating contact the way he did. He could get rewarded with very many free throws,
Yeah.
but it was or any really, but he definitely drew some fouls. I couldn't say enough good things about the way he played, but it's true of everybody on this team. I mean, they got contribute. If you want to go up and down the line, obviously we haven't talked about Jackson Kohler
10
much
score,
in
10
this.
people scored. I mean, just that
Yeah.
alone.
Well, let's start with Jax.
Yeah. He had a
16
go kick game.
rebounds, 7 of them offensive. I mean,
Yeah.
just phenomenal. Phenomenal job. He also had 10 points. Struggled at times offensively with Wisconsin's length. And I still think he does on occasion play a little bit too fast. And then on other occasions, maybe holds on to the ball a little bit too long, trying to create a move for himself, create an opportunity, and he gets into trouble. He got stripped of one today
Hmm.
doing that. But man, 10 points, 6 boards. He had 2 assists and a block. I thought played good defense most of the time. There were times that Kroll got him or Winter got him, but he held his own. And we've seen a guy like Kroll just decimate them before in that building. And so that didn't happen today. And part of that was Jackson's job. So I thought he was phenomenal. I thought Carson Cooper, once again, no surprise.
Yeah.
Carson Cooper, 8 points, only 4 boards. He had 2 blocks. I thought his contributions were bigger than that because it seemed like every basket he had was a dunk. I think
I
that's
think
true. I mean, I can
I
remember
think they were.
3
Yeah.
clearly and
Yeah.
probably all 4. Um, Great defense and just just does his job. I thought Zapala did his job. 5 boards, only 2 points, but 5 boards, had a block. I thought he hung in there physically against that team, and did his work, did his job. Trey Holloman, not the spectacular stuff that we had, but I'll tell you, he had a moment where they had the ball
Oh yeah,
deflected into the backcourt, had to go
right.
the
Under four
length of the
seconds, he
court, which
drove the length of the court. Yeah,
drove length of the court and converted at the rim. Just a phenomenal take. I mean,
yeah,
it shows you what the kind of plays that guy is capable of making. Uh, Cohen Carr obviously had the patented lob dunk in the, or I guess yeah,
he had
he
two.
had a
One of
lot.
them was reverse, I think,
He had a
right? Or
lot of a beautiful pass, and I'm trying to remember who that
it
was.
was
Might have
from
been
Trey.
Trey. Yeah,
Yeah.
could not make that pass any better. Then he also had one in transition, which was again another highlight reel. But the one in transition was the one that I want to call attention to because it was both ends. He stripped, I believe it was Tanjay at the rim, and that guy, as you saw earlier in the game where Jeremy Fears tried to disrupt him in transition and he just muscled his way through it and converted. Tanjay is strong. And Cohen ripped the ball away from him under the rim and then gets himself to the other end. So he's at the far end of everybody, right? He's the
Right.
furthest guy at one end. He ends up dunking in transition at the other. I mean, just incredible. And those are momentum plays. Those are plays that do win you games because the other
Yes.
team, figuratively or sometimes literally hangs their head a little bit, and then you punctuate it by dunking on them. It doesn't get any better than that. Uh, Book hit a three, looked nice. Nice contribution from him. You'll take it. Again, in the first half where points were not coming easily.
Hmm.
And Jeremy Fears, tough game scoring, but 5 assists, no turnovers.
Yeah.
And again, solid defense. I thought he did a really good job. He spent a lot of time guarding the McGee kid, who had to play a lot because, of course, Klesmit didn't end up playing. And McGee has been phenomenal. We talked about it in the pregame, right?
Yeah.
Super efficient, over 50% overall, and from three. He was 1 for 8 from the floor, 0 for 5 from three.
Yeah.
A lot of that is not exclusively, but a lot of that is Jeremy.
Yeah. The one guy who really got going for Wisconsin was Blackwell. He had a
Yeah.
number of drives where he's able to just kind of get to the hole and kind of split people. So he did a nice work, but he also was struggled really from outside as well. He's 1 for 7. And we'll talk about in the keys of the game, I
I
suppose, when it
will
comes to
give
threes.
myself a tiny bit of credit on that one. In our gutter segment, I did mention before I pick somebody else who we'll get
Right.
to.
Yeah.
I said, boy, it wouldn't be shocking if Blackwell has one of those coming home games.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
kind of did. He was really good. He
Hmm.
is really good. I mean,
Yeah.
you
He's a good
saw
player.
the full array of what he does. He is a really, really good basketball player. And I think it's absolutely clear to say both Michigan and Michigan State, you could say now, erred in choosing not to recruit him.
Right.
At least, and give Wisconsin credit because Wisconsin got in hard and they got in early. They didn't let Michigan and Michigan State get back into it, by
Right.
deciding after his junior year, oh, okay, he's shown enough. We're going to offer him now. So he's really good. But you're right. He was the one guy. I thought Winter actually, and I don't know what his
Well,
numbers
I
were.
mean, he had what, 17 rebounds in the game, 14
Yeah.
defensive rebounds, and
Wow. I didn't realize that.
he's 2 for
Good
set. He had nine
Lord.
points.
He
He
didn't
had one
shoot as I
triple.
thought he shot better than that, but
Yeah, he had a
um,
bunch of free throws. That was it.
whew,
4 free throws.
yeah, 17 boards. Good Lord. I had no idea.
It's his career high, by the way.
Yeah, I would say so. Boy, imagine you're Jackson Kohler. You have 16 boards in a game and you're not the high man. That's not
All
going to
right.
happen very often.
Well, let's move on to player that Michigan State need to keep in the gutter. Brought to you by the Brothers of Just Gutters. It's warming up a little bit. I had a great day today. I went up, or yesterday, I was up, went cross country skiing, got 5 miles in the up north, came back down, and got to see a Michigan State win. So, but the snow's not gonna be around much longer. It's all melting. So make sure you have your functioning gutters, whether it's in your house or your business. Kyle, the brothers, they're the ones that's all they do. They specialize in it. So The Brothers Just Two Gutters would be you should be your first call. You'd find ways to get them and get an estimate at our support page at tffinots.com/support. Either Kurt or Greg, and whether you're on the east or the west side of the state. You can get 10% off as a listener to the show if you just mention Final Four when you get your estimate, and they'll hook you up and get in the ladders and take care of all that stuff, whatever you need done with your gutters. So the player Michigan State needed to keep in the gutter was John Tanji, and I'd say they did. He was 3 for 13 from the field, 1 for 8 from three. He had that first three we mentioned, and that was it. He was 0 for 7 after that. He had 4 free throws. He was 4 for 4 from the line. Finished only with 11 points, well below his average. 6 rebounds, all defensive, no assists, 2 turnovers, a steal, and a block. And he was, I mean, I think we said that he's going to get his points, which he did, but he really had to work really hard for him, and he was very inefficient. So a huge win for Michigan State there, and they pretty much kept him in the gutter.
And not even nearly as many as he. And remember, this guy is averaging 19.4 a game.
Right.
He got 11. So that's, yeah. We've said Michigan State with regularity. We've done this segment, obviously, every game. And far more often than not, I don't know what the percentage is, but just anecdotally, it feels to me like 75% of the time, we're at least saying, yeah, he got some things done, but they made him inefficient. They contained him, didn't let him take over the game, because we're generally talking about the best player on the opposition, and most teams, unlike Michigan State, that's usually a pretty clear-cut decision to make. Sometimes you might have a choice between two guys. But this was one of the better jobs that they've done. In a season filled with a lot of good efforts in this regard, this was tremendous. Tanji absolutely is a guy who can impact the game in a lot of ways, and offensively, he can score from everywhere. But you look at what he did, 39% on the year from three, right? And he goes, what was he, 1 for 8?
Yeah, 12.5%.
Yeah, okay. Check. He averages 7 free throw attempts a game. He got 4. Check. Rebounded okay, but I don't think he was he was about on average for what he does. And then overall, I mean, even on twos, he was only 2 for 5.
Yeah.
So this guy has been a wrecking ball. Again, I'll reiterate something we talked about in the pregame. 4 times he scored in excess of 30 points, twice in the Big Ten. Once he went over 40. So this is a guy who has absolutely killed teams. He also, I believe I saw a stat, and I don't know how many games he's got this year that would fit this category, probably not a ton, but I believe he came into this game averaging 25 points a game against top 10 opponents. So the general course of business has been he operates against the best opponents. Like he tunes his game up when the opposition gets tougher. And that absolutely did not happen today. Great, you give Jaden the most credit because he played the most on him and he was in his face. Yeah. That first possession, and that was it. I thought, as I mentioned earlier, I thought Cohen was really good. There was a segment where Tanji was trying to back him down and got to the baseline, and Cohen just wouldn't give up ground.
Yeah.
I think Tanji was surprised that, this is somebody who's as strong as I am, or stronger maybe. Couldn't get past him, ended up taking a bad fadeaway, which Cohen, because he's the jumper he is, managed to contest well, and it didn't come close.
Yeah.
And we mentioned Frankie Fiddler had his moments, hung in there against him. Tanji was not going to be able to take advantage of him either. So it gets back to that in microcosm is what we've been talking about for weeks now. The effect of Michigan State's depth on an opponent. They just kept rolling guys out. And yeah, Jaden's going to take the lead, but they got 2 other guys they could play against him.
Right.
You think Tanji wasn't dragging by the end of that game? You'd be wrong.
All right, so who cleans the glass best? Brought to you by the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. We, as I mentioned, we went cross-country skiing, went down a road, and it is amazing when you go down a gravel road in the winter, how dirty your car gets. Obviously, Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids does not clean car windows, but you get really dirty windows in the winter with all that snow and stuff that they get all the dust and things. So Make sure now that spring's coming, the snow is melting. Contact the Squeegee Squad at Grand Rapids. They can take care of your windows and clean them up so they're nice and pretty. They can get the interior, the exterior, the windows, window sills, the screens, all that stuff that honestly are never going to do yourself. So they'll get on the ladder so you don't have to. They can also do your business, high rise, apartments, whatever it is that you need cleaned, they can take care of it. They can also get on the power wash and clean the side of the house as well, which can get all kind of mucked up in the winter. So head on over to our support page at the Final Fours on the schedule.com/support. There you can find ways to contact the Squeegee Squad, and it is Grand Rapids-ish area, so it's a very large area. If you're anywhere in the kind of western-ish part of the Lower Peninsula, head on over and ask them to come on out. 15% off as a listener to the show if you mention Final Four. And so you had, let's see, so I had I had Richardson who had 5. I had Cooper who had 4, which gave me 9. You had Carr who just had 1, and then you had Jackson who had 16. So you
My
easily
man.
won. you you're running away with that and with the competition. You're up 15-9 at this point. It seems like when I get Jackson, he has like he's foul trouble or he has something happens. So it's just one of those things right now. That's my excuse right now. There was no
Well,
combination I could have picked that would have
no,
gotten enough to match Jackson
I might
Kohler.
have been
So
able to give
I
you
could
3 guys.
you probably could have. It's unlikely that I would have picked someone else who would have had, even
Yeah,
though I think Jaden. I don't know. So
yeah,
anyway, a fantastic rebounding effort from Michigan State, which we expected. But we've had times when it has not panned out as well. But they did a good job today. We'll talk about
they
the
did.
keys too. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
just
don't
I
know.
mean, just a real quick word on Jackson. I mean, this this was because sometimes with him it's about his. I do believe offensive rebounding is in part about work rate, your motor,
Sure,
as the parlance
like
goes,
a Braden Smith, like he gets his
but
rebounds. Yeah, because he's
it's also and it's also about I think the really good offensive rebounders have just an innate sense for where the ball is going to go. I mean, I really believe that. I say this all the time. I'm sure I've said it here more than once. The best rebounder I've ever seen in my life was Dennis Rodman. And Dennis Rodman, you could just tell his reaction time was quicker than anybody else on the floor. And it was in part, it's not just because of the athleticism, it was in part because he just had that innate sense of where the ball was going to go. He understood it. And the best at it have that. And
yeah,
Jackson has that, in my opinion. But out today, for as much as that innate sense helps him, and it did, I thought his work rate was phenomenal.
oh
He
yeah,
just kept going. And that was a key to, I think, why this wasn't just a typical good Jackson Kohler rebounding game. It was a dominant one.
yeah. I don't know if it's just like all geometry of those guys. Like I wonder, like the Dennis Rodman. I mean, not that he's like a great, like Pythagoras or something, but I wonder if he's like just really good at just anticipating and seeing the angles and knowing,
Yes,
like you said,
that's
just
it.
kind of know where
That's
it's kind
it.
of come off.
Absolutely. It's there are, just like we're not all born with Cohen Carr's athleticism. It's I absolutely believe that there are guys who just and they're not going to break it down that way. They're not going to
Right.
talk
There's no
about,
combine,
well,
right?
I could see that this was going to come off at a 33-degree angle. It's
Right.
not that, but they intuitively they had their brain processes and their eyes process. It's like, they always talk about Ted Williams had the ability to see the ball being pitched to him better than anybody else. He had better than 20/20 vision. It's also why he was a fighter pilot
Hmm.
in I think in World War II or the Korean War, one or the other or both. But uh, some guys just have these innate gifts, and I absolutely think that's true
Yeah.
when it comes to rebounding.
Yeah.
Defense, they're two different things. Defensive rebounding, I think it's not that those things we just mentioned don't ever play in there either, but I do think defensive rebounding is much more about sound positioning, strength, sometimes being able to hold somebody off when you've got position, that you maintain it. It's about that more than it is on the offensive end, where I think these other things come into play more frequently.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And yeah, it's kind of like a short, like a center fielder. Just your reaction off the
Yeah,
ball
there
off
you
the bat,
go.
right? It's the same.
Exactly.
It's the same sort of like whatever it is. You can never like
100%. When if you listen to I during this off season, I listened to a podcast with it's the one that oh guy from the
Tigers
Athletic,
podcast. Yeah.
the guy from the Athletic, Cody oh, I'm drawing a blank in his last name, begins with an S. Anyway, it's the one that he co-hosts, and they have Austin Jackson, the ex-Tiger center fielder, occasionally co-hosting, and they had
Hmm.
Parker Meadows, the current center fielder, on, and Austin Jackson and Parker Meadows talking about defense, and it was exactly that. It was talking about the ability to read the ball off the bat. So in this case, it's the ability to quickly read the shot,
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah.
and it matters.
Before we go on
And I
to
don't think you can teach it.
No, right. Yeah. Well, before we go on to the five keys of the game brought to you by Nudge Printing, just a quick reminder on YouTube. If you're not yet subscribed, head on over to our YouTube page at youtube.com/at TFFINOTS. Make sure you hit the notification bell if you're not already subscribed. That way you get notified when you go live. We will have a live show. We're bringing Dom on tomorrow night, top bracketologist. He's going to go over bracket scenarios for Big Ten for Michigan State. And then if any other questions you have, so if you want to if you've got any questions about other teams or things going on or how the process works, he definitely can offer a lot of insight. So come on over and join us tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central. All right. So five keys of the game, as I mentioned, brought to you by Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. We just got our order. My mom, my wife got her Michigan State mom shirt today, and my daughter got a little sticker for her computer. So Nudge Printing has all kinds of different things for the family. As I mentioned before, the apparel is fantastic. And as a listener to the show, you get 20% off just by typing Final Four as one word at checkout. You can't go wrong. Get their stuff. It is super high quality and very comfortable, and it's great stuff. So head on over to nudgeprinting.com for a massive selection of Michigan State apparel and all sorts of other schools as well, both in the state of Michigan and outside the state of Michigan, and even some others in the Big Ten like Iowa and Indiana. And I'm sure as Gabe just keeps adding new teams all the time, so as soon as he gets the rights to it, they'll be added on. But the Michigan State stuff's cool because there are all kinds of different logos you can get, new and old ones. All right, so the first key of the game was guarding the arc. Let's see. Wisconsin shot 16%, 5 for 32. Is that good? Is that a pretty good defense guarding the arc, do you think?
Yeah. I wondered in the first half if, and it wasn't as blatantly obvious as in the Illinois game at Breslin, where it was clear MSU was pushing up so much to guard against a three that it left them exposed. And Illinois has bigs that can pass and really made them pay with a lot of back cuts.
Right.
And you weren't seeing that, but you were seeing Wisconsin really, and they're a good shooting team from two anyway, but they were really doing a lot of damage. But as that game wore on, you cannot fault the strategy or the execution from Michigan State.
Yeah.
As we talked about, no team in the Big Ten shoots threes as a bigger part of their offense than Wisconsin. Not even Illinois, which is hard to fathom. But it's true. The difference is Wisconsin shoots them a lot better. They're a little touch better than 36% on the season. So you said they were at 16?
16%, yeah,
right?
5 for 32
So
or something like that.
20% below their average. That is phenomenal. And most of those were not the result of Wisconsin just missing wide open looks.
No.
They were the result of Michigan State guarding their you-know-what's off.
Yeah.
And there, I'll do you a little favor with the editing.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So, yeah. And so actually good point there is 65 field goal attempts by Wisconsin, 32 of them were threes. They only hit 5 of them, right? So there's a 50% mark of their field goal attempts are threes.
And that's what they
hit
do.
them. Well,
That's
I mean,
what
we're this
they
far
do.
into the season. There is absolutely luck component to whether you're making giving up threes hits or not. But at this point this season, I mean, nobody's shooting threes well against Michigan State. So it's clearly
I got a number
there was something.
for you.
It's partly them influencing it.
The last 5 games, this 5-game run that was supposed to end Michigan State's chances at a Big Ten title.
Because they hadn't played anybody.
Right. What do you think opponents collectively over those 5 games? So just to reiterate, that's Illinois, Purdue, Michigan, Maryland, Wisconsin.
Well, I mean, none of them shot over
What are they shooting
30%.
collectively?
I mean, I bet it's probably 22% or something like that.
You nailed it. That's exactly right. 22%. And not on low volume either.
Well, now when you play
Since you had
Wisconsin and Illinois,
right, exactly. Uh it that is a phenomenal job. Don't let anyone try to convince you that that is not mostly spectacular defense from Michigan State, because it is.
yeah. And, on the flip side, Michigan State shoots 33% from three. Not great, but okay. Going 9 for 27, pretty high volume in the first half. They cut it
Yeah.
down quite a bit in the second half. I mean, Trey just was, I mean, he was just off. I mean, he's 0 for 6. And outside
Yep.
of him,
Good
everyone else is
looks.
okay. But
He had at least a couple of them go in and out. He was snake
still,
bit.
hit four
But
more than Wisconsin and shot five less. That's pretty
yeah,
good.
I will say this. Credit to Wisconsin. We talked about this in the pregame. We said their defensive weakness, if it is one, this game was actually pretty much textbook.
Yeah.
Their defensive weakness, such as it is with the 3-point shot, because they're really good against twos. And you can see why. They play, I'm not sure that it's a strict pack line, but the principles are pretty similar. They are going to pack the paint with defenders. They're going to make it tough for you to get to the rim unimpeded. They're going to make it tough for you to have any shots in the paint that aren't extremely well guarded. And so that means there's no free lunches in this world. To do that, you got
Right.
to give up something. And what you give up typically are threes. But they will live with that. It was a weakness, but only a relative one, because they haven't lost very often, you know?
Yep.
Uh, but it is what they do. They kind of force opponents. I think we can say that. They force opponents into taking a lot of threes. And in Michigan State's case, I think they took more threes than they want to.
Yeah.
But they hit enough of them that it made a difference, right? You'll
Yep.
take 33%, especially at that volume, you'll take it if you're Michigan State. And as we discussed earlier, especially in the first half, it was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
kept Michigan State in the game because they were not getting it done from two. They were not getting in transition much. They were certainly not getting to the line in the first half. So that's what they had. They had Jase Richardson, Jaden Akins, and Xavier Booker keeping them alive. They had 5 threes in the first half. That was almost half of their points, 15 of 32. So it was good enough. Um, I don't think Michigan State would prefer to repeat that in terms of attempts this year, unless they just have a game where they're on fire. But
Yeah.
it worked. It worked.
Yeah. As far as the 3-point defense, there are a couple of things I'd add too. So, their guards were really good. There were hardly any open looks from a guard outside of someone who's, setting up 5 feet behind the line. Like I think McGee had a couple of those where he just was way behind the arc,
Yeah.
kind of like launching it. And also the bigs, they had some. I think Winter had one. I think Kroll had two, maybe. So it was like three of their threes were those guys. But I think they were even quite deep. Like most of the threes they were taking were well behind the line. So it's not like so. That's what Michigan State was doing. They're forcing them off the line,
There it
whether
is.
they're big or small. And also, I mean, the other credit to Michigan State is unlike the with Illinois game. This game, I don't remember them getting back cut at all. Maybe they did once or twice. I
Not
don't remember
much.
them.
Not
I don't
much.
remember that happening. I mean, it's guards drove sometimes, but I don't think there were any where they just were like on a pick roll or something that someone just back cut because they're, guarding too closely on the line.
No, I would agree with all of that. And I think you're absolutely, it's a very salient point about Wisconsin shoot. And look, you can, you can understand that as a part of Michigan State's general defensive philosophy for the entire time Tom Izzo has been a coach. And by the way, it also tends to be Wisconsin's.
Right.
It's they want you to take shots a little further out than you're comfortable with,
Mm-hmm.
or under a little more duress than you're used to. But those shots were shots that Wisconsin took, I think, in part because their guys knew, if I don't take it from here, I'm not getting a clean look at all. And
Yep.
you could, look, a 22-foot, 23-foot, quote unquote, clean look is not a clean look in college basketball
Right.
because there aren't that many guys. In the NBA, it's different, but there aren't that many guys who can hit those with regularity. And so, uh, really, really impressive stuff by Michigan State. And I would say, of everything, this was the most important thing on a macro level because of how important threes are to what Wisconsin does offensively.
So then the second key to the game was the boards. We expected, Wisconsin's not an offensive rebounding team. They are very, very good defensive rebounding team. Michigan State, of course, is elite on both ends. Michigan State ends up winning the rebound battle by, I think, 10 or 11. I don't have the number right in front of me, but I know that from an
Um,
offense rebounding standpoint, they had a 13-8 edge. Only 12-9 edge on second chance points. So not a huge difference there. But Michigan State rebounded a 30.5% offensive rebounding rate, whereas Wisconsin was 18.6. So, that's absolutely a win for Michigan State there, but not a huge difference maker, I guess, in the game. Some of those offensive rebounds late were kind of backbreaking as far as like from their like crushed the spirit of the Badgers, but I don't think they got punished with a ton of points.
Yeah, I 12-9 advantage at second chance points, right? And I
Yeah.
do think there was a couple of segments where Michigan State ended up with threes, and one for sure, and I think there was a second one off of offensive rebounds. And we say that all the time, and it's generally accepted wisdom that uh, the best three you can take is one off an offensive rebound. And it hasn't always worked out that way for Michigan State this year because
Yeah.
at times they've just the struggles from three have made that even a tough trick to turn. But today that was not the case. I know one of Jaden's came off an offensive rebound, and I think maybe one of Jase's as well. Uh, but yeah, it wasn't as important as the job they did defensively on Wisconsin in this game, but it was important that Michigan State carve out the kind of advantage. And look, let's not. What'd you say? Michigan State's offensive rebounding rate was 36%,
30.5.
30.5.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
So,
Wisconsin's a very good defensive rebounding
right.
team.
That was impressive in that considering that there's a good defensive rebounding team. Yeah.
They're 30. I believe they came into the game 31st
Hmm.
in the country. Michigan State 16th on the offensive boards. So we had said in the pregame, right? This is
Yeah.
a strength on strength thing. Like you don't expect Wisconsin to get a bunch of offensive rebounds against Michigan State, and they didn't. Partially that's Michigan State's defensive rebounding, partially that's Wisconsin doesn't emphasize it. But I think that the other end was much more up for grabs. Like strength on strength, who's going to win out? I, we always say 30% is the demarcation line. So you could say Michigan State barely won out, but they won out.
Yeah.
And to do that against that team, that's impressive. For as long as you can go back to you can probably go back to the Dick Bennett era even, and I'll bet it was the same. It was definitely true with Bo Ryan. Wisconsin has long been an elite defensive rebounding group. Year in, year out, they're about as good as anybody in the league at that end. And so to do what Michigan State did today as an offensive rebounding team, hats off.
All right. So the third key to the game was the transition game. From a turnover standpoint, both teams with 9 turnovers. 7-11 edge for Wisconsin on points off turnovers. But what's really impressive, I mean, we're not specifically focusing on turnovers, but fast break points. Michigan State with a
Yeah.
20-8 edge.
Yeah.
I would have been. I don't think I would have believed you had you told me Michigan State was going to have 20 transition, fast break
Agreed.
points. That's more. Now it's a little bit different Wisconsin team in the past, I suppose, but that was amazing. They got as much done as they could that way.
Yep. Uh, some of the threes were transition threes. You can never be 100% certain how they're scoring that,
Yeah, but they usually underscore if anything.
but they do. They do. Um, but what I'm saying is that frequently, what I end up taking issue with is transition threes because to me, secondary break stuff should count
Yeah, right.
because you're forcing the action. That's why you're getting the open look because you got everybody scrambling, right? And I thought
Yep.
Michigan State did a pretty good job with that today. Obviously, they had some other stuff. Cohen's dunk was the loudest one, but they were great pushing the pace. I was just looking at it actually a second ago. Michigan State had 71 field goal attempts in this game. That's
Yeah.
that could be 2 games worth against the usual Wisconsin.
I
I mean,
know
I'm
times have
exaggerating,
changed.
but not by much.
Times they are changing.
Yeah, and I do think part of the reason Michigan State was able to get that much going in transition um, was in fact due to um, the pace that Wisconsin is playing at.
Yep.
You know?
It was definitely, I mean, that game had, there were times when it was like back and forth, up and down quick, and it was not, it was an un-Wisconsin like
Yeah,
pace.
yeah, it's a different thing, and
Yeah.
it's worked for this team. You can't question that. At least I don't. The
Right.
season they're having, I think that it's definitely worked for this particular group that he has. And if some of the things I've read can be believed, it may be reflective of a philosophical choice and change that's going to continue to one extent or another as we move forward from here at Wisconsin. But I think it definitely helped.
All right. So the fourth and key to the game is the free throw line. Uh,
Oof.
Michigan State, dreadful from the line, 6 for 13, 46%. Also, I think one of those was a 1-and-1. They missed the front end of it. I think it traded late in the game when it didn't
Yep.
matter quite so much. Wisconsin, 13 for 16 for 81%. So they got there a decent amount. But Michigan State, not only did they not get to the line very well, but they really didn't convert when they're there. And I, I don't want to talk about the home whistle because I feel like we never get it, but that's just me being
You didn't see
fanish.
one today. You did not see
That's
one
that
today.
stiff arm to Jase Richardson. I swear, I couldn't believe that foul was called. And maybe I didn't see it right, but it sure
I'll
looked
tell you
like it.
that was here was the question. The question with that. So on the broadcast, Jim Spanarkel, the color guy,
Yeah,
said he believed that it was called because Jace, I think it was Blackwell, right?
yeah,
um, Jace grabbed him first. Jace did grab him. So what you probably saw, was the discard
yeah.
by Blackwell. And so what
Okay.
they called was Jace grabbing him before that, which is true. What they missed is that Blackwell had a fistful of Jace's jersey before that.
Yeah. Well,
So it should
and
have been on Blackwell.
Tanji did that as well to Fiddler.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit after that, a couple
Yeah.
possessions later.
They are, and Wisconsin is, and I'm just stating a fact.
It's
I'm
just what
not,
they do. It's just what they
right.
do.
I have respect for that program.
Yeah.
I mean, I've long since moved past the Bo Ryan hatred and all that stuff. They do what they do, and one of the things they do is that they are physical offensively. You think of physicality usually on the defensive end. They are physical offensively, and for years and years and years, they've taught their guys to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, and look, if you get away with it, not much you could say. I mean, you got to live with it. You got to adjust to it as an opponent,
Yeah.
right? And so that was the case. But I absolutely think Michigan State was not the beneficiary of a home court whistle in this one at all.
Yeah.
Especially in the first half, it was ridiculous. It evened up a little bit in the second, but the first was pretty rough.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, I will say this as just a slight note of caution. This makes, I think, it's during this 5 game win streak. The
Yes.
one thing they have not done well in 4 of the 5 games is at the free throw line, both in terms of attempts and conversion
Yeah,
rate.
exactly. Yeah.
They're way below their season averages. So that's got to change.
Yeah, no question. All right. And so the fifth and final key to the game was Tanji, who we already kind of talked about. Michigan State did a good job of neutralizing him and preventing him from really affecting this game significantly. So, um, another win here. I mean, they pretty much, aside from free throw line, they really dominated most of the aspects of this game, which is why we have the result that we did.
Yeah, it's that simple. And I think this was a number I mentioned heading into the game, and I'll update it now. So against fellow top 8 teams in the league, so just the teams in the Big Ten with a winning conference record. Wisconsin is now 2-6.
Hmm.
Michigan State is 7-1. That's that says it all. I mean, it really does. You could reduce it to one number and understand why one team is in position to win a league title, now in position to win an outright league title because they are a full game up after Michigan got wiped out by Illinois at Chrysler
Happy days.
in the second half. They got outscored in the second half, or yeah, they got outscored in the second half by I think 19.
Yeah,
something like
well,
that.
like we've been talking about, that team's been playing with fire for a long time, and
They've been
so
leaking oil
finally
for
got
quite a
burnt.
while, and they've been getting away with it. Well, they didn't get away with it today, and it's almost ironic that they didn't get away with it against a team that has been leaking oil for even longer. Uh, but it's getting back to Wisconsin. That's the difference. It's in. I shouldn't say that. I should say it captures the difference because when you're playing other good teams, that is the best measure of what you are, right? And you see it. Michigan State, one loss, and you know what that loss was? It was by 2 points to UCLA. That's it.
In Los Angeles.
They
Yeah.
haven't lost in Los Angeles on the road. They haven't lost to anybody else in the top eight, and they've got one more game against that group coming up a week from today. And I know who my money's on. Um, it really is. From other people, I saw somebody post on the Spartan Mag board, and it's a good question. When's the last time you see Michigan State have a run of 5 games like this 5 game win streak? Given the level of opposition, given the stakes, all of that, the only one in recent memory that I think comes close is that close to the 2021 season
To get in the tournament.
where they had to
Yeah.
do it to keep the NCAA tournament streak alive, and
Right.
they were going up against teams that were ranked in the top 10.
Hmm.
But this is pretty damned impressive. This is, I mean, you look at what they've done. It's 5 NCAA tournament teams. 4 of them are in that competition for a double bye. Illinois would be the only exception to that.
Right.
So it's the upper tier of this league that they did this against. And what, 3 of the 5 on the road?
Exactly. Yeah, that's I think even more
That's,
impressive
yeah,
that the most on the
that
road and
is,
hostile places, all three of them.
look, people would say whatever the hell they want about this team.
They
But to
do.
me, uh, they have proven what they are now. And you would look past them or disregard them, which it doesn't feel like many people are doing now. I think they've done so much that the national guys that have been a day late and a dollar short on this, um, even they've been forced to knuckle under and realize that they're a damned good team.
Yeah.
They really are. I mean, when you do the things well that they do well, you're going to be a tough out for anybody. And I literally mean that. I mean Auburn, I mean Duke, I mean anybody. They're going to be a tough out. And if they're shooting it well, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. You look at this team and we've talked about it, you were the kind of junk drawer or like chaos or whatever. This is a team that throws 10 guys at you. You don't know what the numbers are going to be. You don't know how they're going to play. Trey Hallman, kind of rough day today. Didn't play as many minutes, but Jeremy
Right.
Fears is better and Jase is out for the first half. Okay, well, Jaden Akins kind of picks it up. I mean, this team has so many answers for when things go wrong, and it is a team that really does not panic too much. They seem to be pretty steady, which is I think exhibited just by the way Jase Richardson plays, right? He's a guy you would expect to be kind of affected because he's a freshman, yet he doesn't seem to he don't plays like a veteran. And the team knows who they are, and I feel like outside of maybe Booker, everybody is kind of getting comfortable in sort of their role and what they're expected to do. And some days are their day, and some days are not. And if it's not, then they know someone else is going to be able to do what needs to be done.
Yeah. It's a group. It's a true group with parts that just fit well together. And what's required of those parts can change from day to day, depending upon the matchup, depending upon how
Hmm.
well they happen to be playing.
Exactly.
But the totality of it gives them a chance pretty much no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I agree.
it's a rare thing. Like I think about even the national championship team, or the '09 team that went to the title game, and most of MSU's other Final Four teams. Those teams all would have a day or two where it just wasn't happening,
Right.
and they got run out of a building. The 2019 team got destroyed against a fairly mediocre by their standards Purdue team at Mackey,
Yeah.
right? Now you could say, well, this team didn't have to go to Mackey, it didn't have to go to Kohl Center. Okay, true. But they don't have control over the schedule. They haven't had a day like that. Like the losses against Kansas and Memphis were losses, but Michigan State was competitive in those games. They didn't play badly. They just didn't have enough to get over the hump. I think games against, I'd be fine playing either one of those teams now.
Hmm.
The Big Ten, the Indiana game
That's
felt
about the
like a
only one you'd say they
nightmare,
didn't play well. Yeah.
but they weren't blown out. They actually had a chance.
Yeah. Hmm.
And we saw the two West Coast games. So that's the thing. This team, and that's one of the reasons why I say I think that the national guys have been, a lot of them at least, not all of them, have been way behind the curve on this team because to me, you could see even in their losses, God, these guys just don't go down without a fight. Like even on a day where they're not playing well, and maybe the other team is, maybe the other team's punching above their weight. It's still going to be a dogfight. If you're going to beat them, you're really going to have to grind it out.
Yeah.
And that's a hell of a trait for a team to have. And when they are playing well, forget about it.
Yeah, it's hard. I'll give the national people a little bit of a pass, only in the sense that you can't watch every game. And so if you don't watch many Michigan State games, you don't see someone who's scoring 25 points a game and who's like a player you can follow easily and you can understand why the team is being so successful. Whenever, we've had 9 leading scorers for games in this season. Uh, it's easy to kind of just dismiss it and think, well, they just sort of things have just worked out the right way. I mean, at this point, you have to admit, I mean, they're 15-3 in the Big
Well,
Ten. You have to admit they're a good team. But I'm just saying that I can see why people just were late seeing it if they're not watching the team on a regular basis.
well then don't pretend to have an informed opinion,
Well,
right?
but a lot of people
That's
have
my
opinions that are not informed.
that's my response. Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're here to call that out. Uh, then don't speak as if you know what you're talking about or that you have a grip on it. That's my point.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be back then for tomorrow night, like I mentioned. So if you've not had a chance, make sure you head over onto YouTube and follow us tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern. Then we're going to have our pregame for the Iowa game, and then we'll have the postgame live show for Iowa. As Michigan State is in first place, but probably it sounds like more like a 2 seed. We'll kind of talk to Dom and see what he thinks, but I think that seems to be kind of where the consensus is right now, especially after this win. You have to imagine
Oh,
they're
oh
definitely in the
listen,
conversation for 2.
the,
And outside chances of 1, I suppose, if things kind of go the right way.
okay. Well, two quick thoughts. So the great Joe Lenardi, who is the definitive word on bracketology, right?
Well,
Right.
he's like top 75%.
Right. But he said before this game today, his morning update, that Michigan State would not drop off the 2 line even if they lost.
Hmm.
So uh, I actually didn't agree with that.
Wisconsin
But
might have.
yeah, I don't think that's the case. But they didn't lose, so they're still firmly there. I am going to be very. That's the first question I've got for Dom tomorrow. Is all right. Play this out with us. Best case scenario: Michigan State wins these last 2 regular season games, and they get to Sunday because we all know the result of Sunday doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Um, they get to Sunday in the Big Ten tournament, so they win. They would be going into the tournament at that point on a, what would it be? At least, well, going into the Sunday game at least, they would be on a 9 game win streak, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe 10 if they win the Big Ten tournament.
Right.
Is that enough? I am going to give you a little bit of foreshadowing. I find it hard to see that Michigan State could get a 1. That's the first thing. And the reason I say that is because Duke's not falling off that line. It doesn't look to me like Houston is, although maybe that's the one that's in play. Uh, and then the two SEC, whoever the two SEC teams are going to be,
Right.
it'll be Auburn and somebody else. Right now, I think it's Tennessee is the conventional wisdom. I
Hmm.
just don't see it. But I would love to hear. I'm very interested to hear what Dom has to say about is there upside beyond where Michigan State currently sits in the eyes of the consensus. If you go to bracket matrix where they're solidly a 2, is there any upside from there? The other thing would be, I'm not sure how much it matters.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I'm
hear you.
really not because if say Michigan State ends up as the strongest 2, well, that means they probably shouldn't be paired with either Auburn or Duke.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you want, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how much, and playing a 16 seed versus a 15 seed. And I know we do have that one instance of bad history with a 2-15 game, but I feel pretty confident in this group that I don't think that kind of slip is coming. If you're going to beat this team, you better be damn good, and you better be playing hard and grinding it, because I think that's what it's going to require. You are not going to beat them unless you grind your way to it. Kind of like the game we saw at UCLA. I thought that was pretty indicative of what I would expect.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to beat Michigan State, you are going to have to match what they come with in terms of intensity and toughness and grit. And that's a tall order. But anyway, we'll see what Dom has to say.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there and see you guys tomorrow night after for Dom, and then also before for the Iowa pregame. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule with the first place Spartans. Go green. All right. Now let's see how quickly I can close down the live stream, folks. Well, it's kind of fun having Michigan go down, so that's a good way to end the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't be
All
better.
right. We are out. So see you tomorrow night.
Are we
I
done?
don't think
Are
we
we